nice background that we have because basically that's how Tacoma looks today. It's just a beautiful morning, summer morning in Washington State. And I always like to say Washington State because we say Washington, everybody thinks we in Washington D.C. And we're in the beautiful Pacific Northwest here in Washington State. We've been having some nice weather, as you want to call it, if you have air conditioner. If you don't have air conditioner, it could be a little hard for me. I don't have air conditioner. I was asking my co-host Pastor Dennis the other day, does he have? He said yes. I said, oh, because I don't. I had this fan in my face. So welcome to Siembra. Today is July 16 of 2023. The year is going by fast, and we have a lot of stuff to talk about. But today our show is about the traditional roles of gender when it comes to relationship. It doesn't, when it comes to relationship, because men and women, and where all these traditional roles come from, culturally, religion, all those different things we're going to touch today. But before that, I wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on. And when I was driving to the studio, I was thinking, Pastor Dennis, that it seems to be in the summertime or even in this time of the year around the world, you can feel more the global warming. It's more like you can see like the earth speaks more to us in this time of the year. I was looking at Greece. I was looking in parts of Europe where it's getting really bad. I'm thinking Korea right now, they had a flooding. So it's like this time of the year is more, you can see it more. It's more obvious than when it comes to the winter or the fall for us here in the United States. So I don't know what is going to be done with global warming, because for some reason people are thinking 50, 100 years, but obviously it's happening even more. The scientists are saying it's happening even more fast than what we think is the timeline that the scientist was given to see what's going on today and how Mother Earth is reacting to what we're doing to the earth. So I don't know if you want to touch on that a little bit, Pastor Dennis. Before that, I want to just introduce my co-host. I'm Yazmin Ford, host of a show Siembra, and we have Pastor Dennis Gunnarson. He sits every third Sunday of the month with me and co-hosts with me at VT Radio Siembra Show.
Greetings. I understand I have a cousin that lives in New Jersey. He's been on the show before. And every time we talk, he's comparing climate differences. And he's convinced. I wasn't sure if we were doing something with the music or not.
No.
But he's convinced that they're getting our rain on the East Coast because they're getting more rain than usual, and we're getting their heat because we're much hotter than usual. In fact, I was talking to my neighbor about garden vegetation and how weird it has been these last couple of years. Stuff that we never had problems with growing, we've had problems with growing. Like, for us, lettuce and peas, those kinds of things, they like the cool weather. Well, this year we had hot real quick into the spring season, and enough to change the growing cycle for both lettuce and peas. So we got a good number of peas, but we got nothing lettuce wise, because of the weird weather.
And I'm thinking, um, I was watching. I was telling you I was watching this show about coal, and also in West Virginia, and I also was watching this
Yeah.
thing in Detroit. How it has changed, and how we don't think that whatever we do, we are a circle. When I think about the Lion King, that is talks about being a circle of life, we are, and we are connected. And we
Yes.
see more and more alligators in Florida all over the place, crossing the freeway, walking in the neighborhoods, and we don't, and we think they are taking our space, but we are taking the space. Also, with global warming, is changing the environment of these animals that are not able to live in their own habitat because of the global warming. We see more coyotes, we see more bears, and we are saying, oh no, they're coming to our space. No, we are taking more of the space, and global warming is also changing the environment, the habitat. So now they are looking for food and stuff in our. I don't want to say our because it's not our. We are taking more land from nature.
Yeah. Well, environmental change is going to involve a whole lot of shifting. Um, there's all kinds of coastland villages that are having to talk about relocating because where they are, their property is starting to wash out to sea, because of the sea levels rising because of um, the Antarctic snow caps are thawing. So there, this, and then you've got the really hot areas where people are going to have to start planting trees. That's a big issue in Seattle now is to plant trees and protect trees so people can't cut them down. So we're going to see a lot of things changing.
And one of the
And
things, there was a documentary too that on NPR that was talking also that in the urban areas there's not trees like in the suburb where the wealthy and the rich people live too.
Right,
So you
right.
see that it gets hotter in the poor areas because they don't have, in the cities they don't have as much tree as in the suburb where the rich people live.
The reality is we're either going to be vacating the downtown areas that have little or no vegetation to protect us, or they're going to be having to redesign it so that we have green spaces in the big cities. So, and animals are no different than us. They've got to survive this just like we have to survive it. So we're going to see a lot more interaction with wildlife.
And that's what I was telling Chris last week, Christmas, Smith. I was telling him that I went to the waterfront. I was looking at all the wildflowers, how they coexist and exist with each other in the same space. And nobody is trying to push nobody out. You could see the dynamic of nature, how you saw the bees and you saw the butterflies and you saw birds. Everything is connected to each other, and they know how to live with each other in the same space. Actually, they need each other in that space in order to exist.
Creation was designed to revigorate itself, and global climbing,
Warming.
climate change is part of that. When we're putting the wrong things into the air,
Mm-hmm.
nature has to change to adapt to it. And eventually, hopefully, if we haven't destroyed it completely, uh, it will rebuild itself. But in
Yeah.
the meantime, we got to deal with the consequences of what we've done.
We went a little bit. We going a little bit off. We can talk about this forever because I was thinking about the Manasseh, the chief
Monastic?
Manasseh from the Lakota tribe
Indian
that
tribe?
he was talking about, the earth rebuilding itself again. It might have to destroy in order to redo itself because we do too much. But let's go back to our subject because we can sit here and talk forever. First of all, I wanted to say hello to everyone that is watching and listen to us through VT Radio Universal. I wanted to give a shout out to my mom in Panama. Today is her birthday. She is
Happy birthday!
She is 82 years old, and of course, she's not watching because she's in church. That is her community. That's where she feels safe and welcome. So she is right now in church, but 82 years old. I always remind her about, that is a blessing. It is a blessing to get to be old and to be present and to be healthy. I tell her there's a lot of young people younger than her that has a lot of health problems that probably they're not present. So shout out to my beautiful mom in Panama. Happy birthday. I love you. I'm so thankful that God picked you to be my mom. And I will be talking to her later when we done with the show. So I wanted to just say happy
Which
birthday
brings
to
up a
my
question. How would you traditionally celebrate her birthday in Panama?
Well, and we are shifting more and more because normally what we
Why?
used to do in Panama and the Spanish community, we just have a big party. We just cook lots of food and have lots of music, and people just come over and dance and eat food, and that's what we do.
Cool.
So today my brother's gonna come see her. Normally my brothers, they come see her at least once a week. I have one of my brothers that come every Sunday and spend time with her, and a couple of my nieces and nephew, they're gonna come over to wish her happy birthday. But normally it's big party. And we cook food and you have lots of music, and we have the whole entire neighborhood and family celebrating with you your birthday.
So you're a party girl by nature.
Yes, we are a party by nature. Yes. So, but now things are changing. I think the party is turning to everybody meet into a restaurant and we go eat. That I'm not really a fan of that type of way of celebrating birthdays and stuff like that. I like the old style. I cook, you guys come, and we have music and we dance and stuff like that. But now it is changing. A lot of times we say we just meet you in a restaurant and we celebrate birthday. I don't know about that, but yes, that's where we at today. So I wanted to just make sure I wish my mom a happy birthday, and we're gonna start our show. The traditional gender roles in society, and I wanted to start with this that I find here. What are gender roles? Gender roles in society means how we are expected to act, speak, dress, groom, and conduct ourselves based upon our assigned sex. For example, girls and women are generally expected to dress in typical feminine ways and be polite, accommodating, and nurturing. Men are generally expected to be strong and aggressive and bold. Every society, ethnic group, and culture has gender roles expectations. but they can be very different from group to group. They can also change in the same society over time. For example, pink used to be considered a masculine color in the US, while blue was considered feminine. Oh, I didn't know that. So I wanted to start a show just talking about gender roles, and I know me and you've been talking about this, where it came from, and I also was reading about different cultures. And why I wanted to talk about this is because I think being a woman and the expectations that are put as a woman is sometimes, and I was reading here, that is sometimes take away from who you really are. And I'm thinking for relationship dynamics should be different based on the personality of the couples. So I'm thinking more of a partnership, that we talk about that. I think relationships should be more of a partnership, and you shouldn't be stuck in roles, because it creates it creates resentment, because somebody always feel like they're doing more than the other person. And I think we shouldn't be stuck in roles, so is you working as I'm married to you, and you working, and you are the male. And a lot of times women, when they used to expect women to stay home and take care of the home and the kids and everything, and sometimes women are overwhelmed, and men would just do their work outside of the house, come home and relax. And then a lot of times they question women, well, why have you been doing the whole day? Because they question, I work, your work is done, mine is not. And a lot of time men will question, or even society will say, well, she's a homemaker, she's really not working. And it creates in that dynamic, it creates, I think, resentment sometimes in the relationship, and it also creates a really strain in the relationship. Men that comes from work and that said, okay, maybe what can I help you with? That I think today is changing. Maybe I can help you with this, even with men too. I'm thinking a lot of times is a man loses job or is not working, there's a question about it too. Why you not working at home is working. Doing stuff at home is working. So these roles, where they came from, who created them, and is they based on the sex, and also on the physical strength of the gender of the person too.
What reality is, the roles, what's traditional, what is whatever, what we know today is relatively recent. Through most of history, gender roles have always been more egalitarian. They've always been, we're trying to get by, we're striving to make life work, and so let's use each other's strengths and mold the roles around each other's strengths. It's only recently that we focus on what is supposed to be your role, what is supposed to be my role, and we've gone to religion to justify it. Granted, that has happened in history too. Back with the Greeks. The Greeks the idea of men studying and being able to learn and to grow. Well, what you still have to eat, you still have to live in a normal house. So the trade-off was, okay, the men get to study and the women get to keep everything else moving. So you cover the bases, but you make it a gender thing. I mean, yes, that's part of our history, but most of history, we haven't had the opportunity for men to be able to sit back and study. And now women have started saying, hey, I have the right to study too. We saw that in Jesus' day with Mary and Martha.
Mm-hmm.
One wanted to sit and learn along with the men, and the other one wanted to, saw
That's very
to be done and jumped in and played the gender role. And Jesus didn't attack the one who wanted to study.
That is a very good example with Martha and Mary, because
Yes.
Martha, she was the one cleaning and doing all the domestic things,
Right.
and she was resentful too.
Yeah.
She said, "Well, I'm doing all of this."
Yeah. And today, reality is life is challenging. And part of the problem that we have today is based on the idea that, we can have women work, but as secondary to the man, we're going to pay them a whole lot less money.
Well, and I was reading about that because today, and there is this thing about in the old days when women stay home and men, it's because also the industrial wave, how do you call it? The industrial
Revolution.
Yes, revolution, where physically, and this is also a question I want to throw out there, that men was expected to go out and work because of the manually and physical strength that they had. Mm-hmm. Today, you're using more technology, you're using more of your brain to even, we talking about AI, and we talking about robots doing our job today, even today with the strike that the actors and the writers are having. That's a big thing right now because they're worried that robots are going to take their job. So we see, because a lot of times we question the physicality when it comes to men and women, but we differently made. We actually physically made different when it comes to our body, when it comes to our emotion, when it comes to nurturing and stuff like that. We just see the world different than men. And
But
I think
even-
a lot
but
of
even
times,
even that is a generalization.
okay.
There are women that could put me under the table with their ability to handle tough jobs and physically exerting jobs. So even that is a generalization. It's generally true, but it's not always true.
And that's one of the things I was thinking, that in one of the reasons I was thinking that men used to go out and do all these jobs was because of the physical part of it too, sort of justifying that role. But when you are told that, or you fall into roles and you can't question it or even strive or grow because of the roles that are already assigned to you based on what gender you were born, I think it takes away from you. It takes from you humanity. It takes from your purpose that God created from you. It takes from you. And I have to say the same thing for men. A lot of times men end up doing work that they don't want to do, but is they have a family, they say, you are the man, you have to go out and do whatever you need to do in order to take care of your family.
Reality is we're all made different. It's common for marriages for people to marry someone who complements their weaknesses. And so there are men who are very nurturing, and there are women that are extremely business savvy, and nowadays we have couples that have married because of strengths, and the man has to face the ridicule of a society because he likes and prefers the home role of
the dynamic,
fostering children and taking care of the kids and supporting them, and the wife is better at bringing home high pay.
And I was watching a show about that too, and it was talking about one of the things about men, if the man is not doing what you supposed to do as your role as a man, and because the woman probably makes more money, and the dynamic here is to sit down and see what works for you in your family. Because for me and my ex-husband, it was that he works at night. I used to work in the daytime in order to take care of our son, and our son didn't have to go to daycare because we decided to do it this way. So you always have to sit down and see what it is that work for you as a family, as a couple. Exactly. And not follow these roles that are and expectations that are put into the dynamic of the family. And I'm finding that we're going backwards in that sense. That I was listening a couple weeks ago that the church, one of the Baptist churches, saying that women cannot be ordained. I'm like, Jesus walked with a lot of women. His clique was women. You kidding me?
This religious fixation with God has put into play these job descriptions, these roles, these scripts that we absolutely must live with is absurd, but it's all created by and fostered by a fear of the changes that are happening in culture. People are afraid of losing stuff. You talk about the differences of how your culture would celebrate birthdays versus what we celebrate today. Reality is convenience does affect culture. Mm-hmm. Culture changes to fit what works and what doesn't work. Egalitarianism is adapting, and culture adapts, and we can lament culture changing. We can lament things that used to be realities yesterday that aren't realities today. But if we really look at how cumbersome and how exhausting and how unfair some of those old practices were, that's why they're not surviving.
Yeah, and it again, I think, let me read this. It says here, while the vision of labor makes sense at the bigger level, it can have this disastrous consequence. That's because traditional gender roles don't take into account individual preference. Exactly. And that's where we are. This leads to judgment when people try to break away from the list of the female gender roles, or males wants to establish their own way of doing things.
Yeah.
And again, I think this generation, my son and your daughter generation, is doing it differently. And I
Yeah.
think politically it's been it's a struggle because it's been a pushback. Because I'm thinking the gender roles has to do more than anything about control.
Yeah. It's our generation and older that is the real problem.
It is.
Because we have seen such a huge shift in culture. And it's unsettling for a lot of people to experience the kind of culture shift that we have experienced in our lifetime. But it's not been bad, it's been good. There's a lot of really good things that happen. What's driven a lot of our culture change most recently is the reality of the people that were held down, and society's foot was at their throat for so many decades, and now we're not starting to see that video and see that reality and start saying, wait, that's not what life is supposed to be about. It's not supposed to be about your suffering so I can do better. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I'm thinking again, if we see, and at the beginning of the show, we're talking about nature, as we see our role as minimal, and I say as minimal in the sense that we here, but we are a small part of something that is bigger than us. That's what I'm trying to say. We here to contribute, but we have to look at things in a bigger scale. And I think for the political establishment, they want to make sure they keep it the way it is or used to be, in order to keep us divided, in order for us not to work as a community, not look at gender, color, or even religion.
I really don't think the political system is really needing traditional culture. Traditional culture is just a toy, just a ploy to control people.
Yes. Uh-huh.
It's nothing more than just something they can use. It doesn't have any intrinsic value. It's just it's a trigger.
So what do you think about the Republican Party when they talk a lot about masculinity? I'm saying it wrong, I know.
No, you're saying it right.
And femininity, and especially now they're pushing this agenda with with white young male, to make sure that they throw in this dog whistle telling them you want to make sure you're macho and you don't get into being into this feminine spirit that is taking over the world.
I don't think that part is a political thing. That is fundamentalism. Mm-hmm. That is trying to manipulate people, and it's fundamentalist not because it's Christian. Fundamentalism crosses all political and religious boundaries. It is a way of stopping forward movement and entrapping people in the past, and it's based in fear.
You control people by keeping them afraid. But I was reading this too. It says here, as this chapter on creativity explains, for instance, gender role expectations can lead to underachievement and low creativity at school. That's
Yeah.
because to be creative, you need to combine sensitivity at traditional female traits with independence, more typical for most traditional male roles in society. So you need all those things that we already have,
We capitalism thrives on innovation, and innovation thrives on diversity. So in the system we live in, we need that diversity. We need to drop these traditional roles and these traditional uh, um, structures, and allow people to be who they are and do what they want to do and try different things and think differently. It's counterintuitive to hold them to a rigid system.
and that's
Destroy capitalism for one thing.
and that is it has to do with the expectations that they put on based on your roles, even when we think about sports and when we think about a in when it comes to CEOs and women that are on top of the game when it comes to being running big corporations and big companies. Yeah, and we have done a lot of strive. We have progress a lot, but I was reading that we have probably 50 women that run in big corporations today, compared to 400 and something men running it. So we still have a lot to do. And I was thinking, I was watching a series a couple years ago, and it was talking about the when it comes to the New York Times and reporters. It was crazy. I couldn't believe it. It was crazy in the 1950s and 40s that the woman, they will do all the reporting, investigating. They will also write it, and the men, the reporters, the men is the ones that when they publish the articles, they take the credit, actually. And the in the newspapers, the men had the basic office, and the women, they used to be in the basement working separately. And they as soon as the men walk in, the women will have to bring them coffee and all these different things. And I remember it was in the time of Gloria, what's her name? Gloria State.
Or Steinem?
Yes, yes. And she and a couple women, and also women of color, organized and said this needs to be changed, because woman reporter was not getting credit, and they was doing all the investigating. They were writing it, and when it was published, the men get the credit. It's just crazy. And even in sport today, reporters in sport, and in the 1980s, even in the 1970s, the woman could not go into the lockers. That was another fight. They didn't want the women in the lockers to ask questions or anything like that. But we have made a lot of strive when it comes to the woman. But I also wanted to talk about male. I think the men have suffered in the sense that they get stuck in doing jobs that they probably don't want to do. They get stuck in saying, well, I have a family, so I have to do this. And I don't think a lot of times, even watching the documentary of West Virginia, that they're really not allowed to use this creativity and that they have. And these jobs in the coal mines just go from generation to generation, that they say, and they also talk so proudly like this is a manly job, this is a job that a man does. but you can do more than that. There's more to you than that, and I think men suffer in that way too.
Yeah. You know, when you talk like that, it reminds me of Fiddler on the Roof. Did you ever see that?
No.
It's a story of Jews in Russia. And one of the primary songs in there is tradition, tradition. You know, who will play these various roles? Who will do all this other stuff? Tradition.
So men also gets don't grow. I think when you put them in these roles.
No, it diminishes people. We have a problem with addiction. Addiction is a symptom of another problem. Addiction is not the problem, it's the symptom. If we could, those people who become addicts are trapped in something, and they need to get out of whatever that is that they're trapped in if they're going to get free and be able to live life like they want to. And we've got so many of those things, and those people who are realizing that are getting free and moving forward. Our GDP, gross domestic product, is evidence of those who are breaking out of that traditional stuff and finding some liberation and finding a different way of doing stuff. That's why, and they are winning the competition.
And I was thinking, we in the United States, we do beat our chests about being so progressive when it comes to women rights and all those different things. But I think for me it was more obvious when Hillary Clinton was running, how mean and vile the propaganda was against her. And I even had women of color telling me that they would not vote for her because she's a crook. It was like almost everybody that is in politics, they're a crook. So what is the difference between she and the men that are there for 200 years? To me, it was, that's when I see it, when it was more obvious to me how mean they treat women in power. And if you are assertive, if you have confidence, if you are the B word, it's same traits that a men use or attitudes that a men use. They just narrative wise, it varies depending on the gender. And to me, it was so obvious when she was running. I was like, what is going on?
These kinds of reactions happen when those people that are making those statements are losing. The fact that we heard all that crap is proof that women were making a great strides in forward movement. There's always going to be the jealous ones that are jealous of their success. We saw the same thing with President Obama. Those who are jealous.
But I was thinking, because the whole thing was because she was a woman. Because she has even better qualifications than the other people that were running. And then
exactly. They made her shameful.
And we sit here and talk about the Middle East, but we underline, we have the same treatment for women and disdain for women in power. Yeah. I've been here how people of color men of color talk about Kamala, uh, the vice president. And I said, wait a minute, they don't like her. You
No,
know, she's not like. Why is the reason that she is not like? You know,
because black men are just as misogynistic as white men.
I've heard black men talking about it, and I said, wait a minute, what? You know, and is this underlying machismo that's going on in the United States that we don't want to say and recognize that it exists when
Yeah.
it comes to women and women in power? You know, we talk about
We're,
uh-huh.
we're hearing all of this because that element of society is in a fight for their life. They
But
know they're losing. They know their days are numbered, and they're throwing everything they can
I,
at this fight to get an upper hand.
I don't understand that because you already have the upper hand. You have 1,000 steps in front of women and black people than everybody. So I don't even understand where that fear comes. You are
Because
already on top.
because we're on the edge of losing it. That's where the fear comes from.
I think people think they're gonna lose it, but it's you have 1,000 steps ahead of me. Even as I do 200 steps, I still can't get caught up on you.
Yeah, well, we have an expectation. We know how we've treated women. We know how we've treated minorities, and we expect when they get the upper hand, they're going to treat us the
I think
same
that's
way.
it. I think that is it.
We
That is
are
definitely
afraid
that's what that
of
is.
facing the consequences of our bad behavior. That's the crux of it.
You
Is
know,
we're afraid. And I'm saying that because I should be feeling the way they do. I don't. I am a human first and a white male 10th. You know, so I don't buy this crap that we are in competition with women and minorities.
and that is the language that Mussolini used. That's the language that Franco used, that Hitler used to make sure they
Mhm.
conquer by keeping people divide. I have to say, I have to give props to President Biden because he has been the president that has appointed more women in his cabinet than any president in history. He also has been the president that has put more women of color in his cabinet, also the LGBT community. So his cabinet really I think is the one time that reflects what our country looked like. And I'm really it fills my heart to see that and he gets it. And when I hear people saying that he's too old to run and all of that, then sometimes I think he is, but you think he will be stuck in his generation, but he's not. He is living with the changes of the time. He is going with the flow. He's not
Did you
resisting and going against the flow.
did you see his or hear his university speech? It, uh, isn't it Lithuania where the UN was meeting this
Yes,
time?
I think that I don't
So
want to say yes, but I think
so if it was Lithuania, he spoke at a college or a university in Lithuania, and wow, what a powerful speech that he gave.
I didn't hear it. Now I'm gonna go and hear
So,
it.
have you heard Do you know Robertson Cox? I can't remember her
No,
first name.
no.
She is a historian that writes history as it's happening, and she shared his speech. I've seen it a few other places. Um,
I'm gonna look it up. So, so one thing, I mean, that I see with him, that he is not stuck. Whosoever he has around him,
uh,
it's really giving him good
yes,
advice when it comes to make sure that he has people that represent the
yeah,
fabric of the country today.
yeah. You know, it's the proof of that is in what he's been able to achieve after Trump derailed
Mm-hmm.
so much of our government, and our government was on the edge of failure when he walked away from the office. And Biden just stepped in, and before he ever put his feet on the ground, he had this country almost back to normal.
Yeah, and I think
I was astounded at
the
that.
thing that I don't like of the Democrats is that they don't talk about all those things. 1.3 million jobs, and they don't talk about these things. They don't talk about all the stuff that the Democrats has done in such a short time. I
Well,
th-
they're not able to get that message out where it's resonating on the bigger scale. That's true. Uh,
I think
but
they're very
reality is
bad of they're
fear
very bad
is
of
better than truth.
yeah, I think they're very
Republicans are big into the fear. You know,
I think they're really bad of communicating and having the narrative out there. I think that's and me and you, I mean I like politics, obviously. I know a lot of things because that's what I like, but the average person, I should say the average person because I'm an average person too. It's just that I like this. But um a lot of times they don't know, they don't care to know,
yeah,
and
yeah,
you continue to have the other side pounding the same things over and over, eventually you believe it. I mean,
yeah.
even in the right now we have the Republicans talking about all the different projects that are gonna start in these different states, but and all of these senators that are saying, we get a grant of $50 million to start a broadband stuff in, um, and they voted against all these different things,
Yeah.
and the Democrats don't take advantage of that and said, hey, yeah, well, you getting that grant, but you have nothing to do with it. You voted against it. We have to actually make sure that people know that these people that are representing them, they're not for you. They're not rooting for you. They just want to get rich and get paid by the people that lobbies them to continue to do what they're doing. So I think the thing that I don't like from the Democratic Party is that they're not good at putting the the narrative of what's and letting people know all the progress that has been done in the short time that the President Biden been in office, and for the
Well,
people.
I I I I have to reframe that a little bit. The Democrats are not very good at getting people outraged
I think you're right. You absolutely
because
yes.
it's not about the information. People don't really care about facts. They care about emotions, and and emotions require a lot of lying, and they a lot they require a lot of stretching facts.
Because you know that when I speak to you, I get so, oh my God, I don't even watch the news about Donald Trump anymore. I had a friend that when he was running, he said he would just take his shoes and throw it on the TV because he couldn't stand him.
Yeah.
I don't even watch anymore. And the same rage that I have when I listen to these people saying these things, I don't think the Democrats been effective of doing that. You're right.
You know, I think the Democrats have. They are chipping away at that whole monster a little bit at a time, and they're letting the Republicans embarrass themselves. And reality is the Republican base that is driving all of this this fear and all of this emotion. They're not driven by truth; they're driven by fear, and they're just yelling louder than anybody else is, because that's the only thing they've got to do is volume. That's the only point they've got to make is volume. You know, and some of us don't want, volume has two different effects. Number one, it makes you crazy. And number two is it doesn't last. When the dust settles, the truth does win out in the end. It's just in the interim, it has everybody crazy.
I think when you're loud, people are really not listening, and they're just looking at their emotions, like you said.
Exactly.
You know, people are not really listening. As I start yelling and screaming today and just saying this, I would get people's attention. People would stop. But people more and more looking at my mannerism and how my personality and and not really what I'm saying. I was reading right here, gender role example also cover personality. You know, the same traits in a man and a woman are not described the same way. When we were talking about that. So men are confident and persuasive, but women are bossy and pushy.
Exactly.
You know, so as I start doing the same thing that a man does, then they say I'm a bee, that I have been called that. I'm pushy and called bossy and all when I said, hey, this is what I want, you know. That would
and that's true with media as well. You can tell the same story with the exact same details, but if you flip it based on a positive word versus a negative word, or maybe I should say a supportive word versus a derogatory word, then you have a completely different story, but the facts don't change. It's just the biased media frames it differently.
And here I had a thing right here saying non-traditional gender roles are when men and women swap their positions. So the woman might have a higher paying job, meaning that her husband becomes a stay-home dad. Of course, this goes against the list of the traditional gender roles in marriage, such that others might scorn this approach. And then it says right here, we all talk on roles. We all take roles in our life, whether this is at home or with our friends and colleagues. This makes us more effective. Nevertheless, many cultures are now questioning whether our biology is enough for a reason to have traditional gender roles.
And I unequivocally say no.
Yes.
Biology should have nothing to do with the roles we play.
And I wanted to talk a little bit of the different roles that women have around the world. Like in Africa, All throughout Africa here, it says that culture is important and considering how we might be all that most cultures I want to despise of let me remove I didn't highlight what okay right here I highlighted here. Okay, so marriage and concubines in Botswana and Swaziland, polygamy is tolerated, and some pastors have a wife in the rural areas and other in the city. This is especially true for itinerant evangelists who are allowed to keep concubines in different cities where they go to preach. My God.
Yeah. And that's based on the idea that a woman is there to support the man and make him look good.
And this is right here. It says wife inheritance. Some men put aside their Christian perspective in order to seize the properties and wife of the deceased brother. So we going back to what the Bible talks about too, that if you as a husband die, the wife just become wife of the brother of the husband. And I don't even today culturally to see that happening in these countries is crazy because the woman don't have a saying.
But
And this
those
is based
laws,
on
those
religion.
laws are economic laws.
But it doesn't help the
They're
woman
about
economically.
they're about turning everything but the boss into a price tag. And the same would be true in today's world in big industry. You know, we're all price tags.
That
We're valuable only because of what we financially provide to the company. You know, and not that every company looks that way, but by and large, we are a price tag, and we live in a society where we are all a price tag.
and I have to agree with you. We becoming as human beings, we becoming more of a product
Exactly.
than a human being, and we creating systems and creating environments where you host that. Even driving here to the studio, I was listening to NPR that they were talking about the crisis of the farmers in around it's I'm thinking California, Washington State, where they're saying that they're not having people that are they just get $18 paid. They come and work for a season, and now these houses where they put them up, they used to have beds, a queen size bed, and now they're doing bunk beds so they can have more hosts, more people, and put more people in these homes. You know, and I think it was in Georgia where they sue a company that did onions because they even have electric fence so that people can get out. You know, and now they're creating laws where this Congress and the Senate is trying to create laws now where these farmers that come and work for seasonal farmers that come and get these visas can sue these companies. So we becoming, as human beings, we becoming more as a product for these
Absolutely.
companies system that is it's just crazy.
Yeah. You know, Yasmin, when we were talking yesterday, you mentioned about a situation you read about. I wonder if we could talk about
Oh yes.
that.
Okay, so I normally don't watch to reality show, but the other day I stopped and watched reality shows about Kingdom something. I don't even after a while I changed it because it just upset me. And I had this girl. She's married. She's married and have a child, a son, a daughter with this man that he wants to become a minister. And her dad, she comes from her dad. Her dad is a pastor, and her husband now wants to become a pastor. So he started to go to seminary school to become a chaplain or deacon. I don't know. And he was going to school for 4 weeks or 5 weeks or five weeks, and she didn't know anything, but he went to her dad, and her dad, even before he started school, give him his blessing and say, yes, go ahead and do it. And she didn't know anything. So finally her husband told her, yeah, your dad gave me your blessing. And she said, what? I'm your wife. I should know what's going on. And he said no. So she had her dad, to make the story short, her dad and her mom come over to talk about the whole thing. And her dad told her, he said, the calling is really good. The calling of, when God called your husband, he doesn't have to tell you anything. You just have to obey God and follow what God said. And she said, so what do I do in this whole thing? Because God is calling him, and his wife is calling me too. And Dad said, well, he doesn't have to ask you permission to follow God. I was sitting there. I was like, what? And then the mom came out and said, well, yeah, you just have to, support him. And she said, I sit here and watch you, Mom, as a pastor, wife, suffer. Because my dad would always put God according to him first. And we always stay in the back burner. I'm not going to let this happen to my marriage. I just changed it. I was like, I'm done. And you can see the thinking of the generational gap.
Yes.
Because you can see the thinking, today, this girl that is a pastor daughter said, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. The sad thing about that story is we hear it over and over and over again. Have you ever heard of a lady named Amy Semple McPherson?
I think so.
You heard of the Foursquare Church?
Yeah.
She founded the Foursquare Church. She was a faith evangelist, and she did the very same thing as the man in this story did. She decided that God had called her to this ministry, and it didn't matter if her husband, how her husband felt about it. And so she went and did it, divorced him, and married somebody else.
Wow. But
you've heard of Oral Roberts?
Yes.
His son, Richard Roberts,
married her?
Did the very... What's that?
He married her or no?
No, this is a completely different story. But he also did the very same thing. He was married, and because his wife was competent and he was rivaling her for popularity.
Wow.
He claimed that God had told him that marriage was not from God, and that he was to marry this other woman.
That was more submissive, I guess.
Yeah. And so he remarried, blaming, in all of these cases, blaming God. But this is just individual selfishness. And the idea that God can speak to people and tell them to destroy other people's lives around them for their benefit.
It's crazy. And that people believe it. That's not the
Exactly.
That's, to me, that's not so much so bad.
Exactly.
But for me, when people are believing that, I'm like, okay, what is
Yeah.
going on here? Um,
So
I
God is so what God is your personal PR agent?
and I think I think I was talking the other day. Me and Christian was talking about this about prophets because today the church has done so much wrong. I remember having a pastor, David Cruz. He always told me and told the church, he said, "Do not go around following prophets. I see people
Yeah.
jumping around. Let me go and see what this person is going to tell me that God told them." God, he said, no, if God need to tell you something, he's going to tell you. You need to be going around asking people what God told you about you. And I think that's where we get it, where people get gullible and people get that is I know God is going to talk to me about me. Why God is going to talk to you about me? you know. But I think people use a lot of stuff in the name of God, and because they really can't question God, they they believe it. But one of the things that I think the church have done. Oh my God! Yes.
Yeah.
So we almost close. Christian, how much time we have here?
Reality is
5 minutes.
on the matter we just talked about. The Bible says the spirit of the prophet is subject to the prophet. And when it comes to prophecy, that's true. They, you know, that you can blame God for anything you want to, but it really comes down to you. You are the one driving it, and the same is true in sexism. Is if the spirit of the spouse is subject to the spouse. It's marriage is supposed to be about two people uniting themselves together and figuring out a way for the two of them to do best and survive and thrive. It's not about one of them coming in to serve the other one. It's about both of you working together and serving each other.
And
And
I,
that's the biblical model.
and I think that is we looking to see this more and more with this generation. We've seen
Yes.
it working more with my son, your daughter generation, with this generation. We've seen that they're breaking those molds and saying, no, we're not doing it that way. We come into a relationship and the dynamics are very different. What might work for you as a couple with your wife it might not work for me. And that we should always look a relationship as individual, not as a mold where everybody needs to fall into these roles like robots and just follow
Right.
them, because you don't grow.
Right.
You don't grow. I remember in my marriage, God told me, he said, if you stay, you're gonna die. And he didn't say literally die, but he said you're gonna die of who you really are. Because a lot of times you in relationship where you conform in order to stay, you die of your dreams, you die of your purpose, you die your voice, you don't have no more voice, you're not there, you're not living the life that God called you to live.
Right.
And he said, you stay, you can stay because it's easier to stay. When you stay, you're already used to the dynamic and you're already used to whatever is going on. It's harder to start over again, but you're gonna live the life that I wanted you to live, that I created you to live. So relationships are different, and I'm seeing it. I'm so happy. I'm so to see that our younger kids are doing it different, and they're breaking those molds, and they're not following tradition. So I think for some people it might look like good, bad, because they want to keep on in these roles where I don't think the woman benefit. I think the woman gets the harder part of the stick, but I don't think men either benefit. I don't think men, even though they created this system where they put themselves above, they still not doing well. Because
Yeah. You know, there's a scripture that is often used horribly about being unequally yoked in marriage.
Oh my God.
And I think you're talking about the idea of being unequally yoked when one of them towers over the other and is the
I think a lot of times.
personality. That's being unequally yoked. To be equally yoked, we need to be able to both thrive in the relationship, and that's what marriage should be, where both are able to live up to their potential. And when only one can do that, that's unequally yoked.
Yeah, and I think being in a relationship where you're competing with your partner is not good, because you
No.
don't have the same goals. You have to have a goal as a couple, and I don't think when you start competing, like you said, this lady divorced her husband because she feel like, hey, this is not gonna work. You gotta follow me, So, but what it is you want to tell people about gender and gender roles today, and even in your life, personal life, how it changed today, the view, how you grew up.
Yeah. Well, what I'd say when it comes to relationships, they will always be changing and you'll always be growing. If you ever stop, someone is getting shafted.
You die to your
Yeah.
own self. You're here, but you're not here living your whole,
Right.
So yeah, I want to just tell everyone, thank you for listening. Thank you for and we just want to leave this, in the universe, in the spirit world, that at the end of the day, we are here to connect. We interrelational people. We human beings that are here to connect and to help each other grow in our own space, to allow each other to grow. And the goal to me is to serve. I think at the end of the day is to serve, to love and to serve each other. So thank you for listening to Siembra. And thank you, Pastor Dennis, for sitting here and co-hosting with me. I hope you enjoy the day. It's going to be in the 70s today. And enjoy. Thank you. And thank you, Chris, for sitting here this morning with us, a director, producer behind the scenes.
Always a pleasure.
And you guys have a nice day.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Chris and Yazmin. Enjoy the weather.